Hello, I'm Father Leon Pereira, and this is Fry the Friar. This is where you email in your questions to do with the faith, with the Catholic faith, and I try and answer them. So let's start. We have a letter from Catherine, and she says, would it be possible to explain papal infallibility a little, please? In particular, when, how, and why it is used. Okay, to explain it a little. First of all, the whole church is infallible in her faith. By infallibility, we mean cannot fail. Okay? And in what sense? That because the Catholic Church is guided by the Holy Spirit, she will be guided and protected in some way. This is most often expressed in what we call the ordinary magisterium of the Church. The magisterium in Latin means to do with the teachers, the teaching authority of the Church. So this is the bishops all together. The bishops throughout the whole world, all teaching the same thing to do with the faith. This is an exercise of their ordinary magisterium. An exercise of their extraordinary magisterium is when they gather together in a council, not a synod as such, but an ecumenical council. And then their teaching on faith and morals is guaranteed to be not wrong, infallible. That's what infallible means, not wrong. Now, many people think of infallibility as some kind of divine inspiration. It is not. So I want to put it to you in very clear, simple terms. If the Pope were infallible in higher mathematics, what's the lowest score he could get on a test in higher mathematics? And the answer is, of course, 0. Because I asked you, what is the lowest score he can get? It's 0. Because he doesn't have to answer any of the questions. He could just hand in a blank piece of paper and he'd get 0. Like anyone else who hands in a blank piece of paper. Okay? But if he tries to answer, if say he's infallible on mathematics, if he tries to answer, then whatever he answers will be guaranteed not wrong. Okay? So the lowest score he can get is 0. I need you to remember that and to understand that. Because many people think of infallibility as a divine inspiration and whatever he says must be true. And they're willing to believe all kinds of mad things. You know, if the Pope tells us, now it's okay to do this, that, and the other, it must be okay. No, that's not how it works, okay? Papal infallibility is a special example of infallibility in the Church, where the Pope, as the successor of Peter, he inherits the promises made to Peter. On this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not overcome it. Peter, I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail, and when you turn, that you may strengthen your brothers and sisters. And also, Peter, do you love me more than these others? Feed my sheep, feed my lambs, take care of my sheep. So things like that, that role of Peter, the promises of Jesus, come to whoever is Pope, because he is the successor of Peter. So he doesn't have this divine inspiration and he'll automatically know what's the correct answer. He has to do his homework. If he's speaking off the cuff randomly, or in the back of a plane, or at the kebab shop, when you catch him and say, well, by the way, Your Holiness, what's this? You know, you catch him off guard. Whatever he says could be right or wrong, but it'll be his own opinion, okay? So it's on things to do with faith and morals. What we have to believe, what we have to do. That when he exercises his authority, then he's guaranteed not wrong. Now, the exercise of that authority, as you said, when and how, and would be very rare. For example, Pope John Paul in Evangelium Vitae, he confirmed the immorality of abortion and euthanasia, but he confirmed it as Pope. He even uses this language as the successor of Peter. But even that was not an exercise of papal infallibility. It was the ordinary papal infallibility, where he's just confirming what has already been taught by the Church. confirming for the rest of us. An extraordinary act would be things like the definition of the dogmas of the Immaculate Conception, and Immaculate Conception in 1854, where the Pope confirmed what the Church had already believed anyway for 2,000 years, and in 1950, when the Pope then confirmed the dogma of the Assumption of Our Lady. And he just confirmed what the Church had always believed. But he confirmed it for us, Peter strengthening his brothers and sisters. So those are examples of when it has been used. Okay. Then, from Emily. When alcoholism is experienced by a spouse, negatively affecting teenage children and the partner, staying married and united is extremely difficult. How does the Church deal with separation as a result of this? How does the Church deal with separation? Talk to your parish priest or to a spiritual director. Talk to prayerful and holy people. Well, not to a whole bunch of them, because this mustn't become like a gossipy thing. But that person, the spouse, would need a lot of support and help. And also the other one, the alcoholic, needs to confront his or her problem. And they might be in denial at first, but someone has to make them see the harm they are causing their marriage and to their children, and that this is an intolerable situation for the whole family. Then from Chris, I'm in a friendly dispute with my wife about coffee before church. I presume you mean before Mass. I sip on coffee on the way to Mass in my Yeti cup, okay, and she thinks I shouldn't do it. Am I wrong for doing so? Okay, well, it all depends. Are you having this within an hour of Holy Communion or more than an hour before Holy Communion? That's it, okay? So coffee, unless you're a priest saying his second Mass of the day or third Mass of the day, you are not excused to be able to have coffee within 1 hour of Holy Communion. The Eucharistic fast is in place, okay? And no one can, what's the word for it? Absolve you of this? Not absolve. No one can mitigate this law, not even a bishop. Okay, you yourself have to judge yourself. If there's some important reason you want to have coffee, you can. But then, if you had coffee, then you've broken your Eucharistic fast and you can't have communion. So choose. Do you want Jesus more or coffee? Then a letter from Sharon. According to the Catechism, hosts that are entirely gluten-free or made from other substances such as rice or corn are invalid for the sacrament. Do you agree with this statement? Yes, of course I do. It's Holy Mother Church speaking. I'm not going to disagree. Okay? Considering that transubstantiation is the changing of the substance, but the properties remain the same as they were before the bread and wine was changed into the body and blood of Christ. Okay, I'm not sure I understand the second half of this question. So I'm going to try and supply your question for you. Are you suggesting, Sharon, that because the substance turns into the body and blood of Christ, it shouldn't matter if you are a celiac? Is that what you're saying? Now, I answered this question recently. Certainly in Ireland, I talked about this, and there was a lot of misunderstanding. And usually through a correct instinct. The instinct here is people who believe this is really the body and blood of Christ. That's a good instinct, because it's true, it really is. And then they think, therefore, the celiacs should not be making a fuss. Why should they have special hosts which are low gluten? There's no such thing as gluten-free. It's low gluten, okay? Because it must contain gluten, because it has to be wheat. And gluten is part of the substance of wheat. It's of the nature of wheat, okay? So low gluten hosts, and I think you answer your question yourself, but I'm not sure you realize that. Transubstantiation means what the bread and wine are become the what of Jesus' body and blood. Okay? But their physical properties remain the same. The physical properties remain the same. So it will still taste like bread, it will still taste like wine, but it's the body and blood of Christ. So if there's gluten in there, the properties of gluten will still be there. And if it's high gluten, it will irritate celiacs, their stomach linings, etc., and their intestines, and cause a crisis, a reaction. Hence, low gluten hosts, or most of them, I think, in countries where they allow giving out the chalice, they receive from the chalice the precious blood. Okay? So remember, transubstantiation is the reason why we do have low gluten hosts. Okay. Question from Abigail. Can a Catholic who married an Anglican receive Holy Communion in the Catholic Church? It depends where you got married and how. If you got married in a Catholic church to this Anglican, then of course you can. If you got married in an Anglican church, but with permission for some really good reason, for example, the Anglican's father is the vicar and he wanted to do the wedding, your bishop might give you permission, your Catholic bishop might give you permission to have the wedding in an Anglican church. Then, okay. But if you got married to this Anglican without permission from the church, either in a Protestant church or in a registry office or something, then go and see a priest, have your marriage regularized, and go to confession, and then you would be able to receive communion. Then, this is a question from a Catholic, or actually I can see who it is though. I think I don't know which one is the surname. And there are 3 questions. Why are there 3 questions? Okay, the question is it a sin not to desire or to be mentally open to more children? Yes, we have to be open to life. Okay, that's if those who are married. Number 2, I think really these are questions you need to go and talk to your parish priest about, to your pastor. You know, you can't just rely on me giving an answer and then saying that's it. Because then the second question is, what if it's your spouse who doesn't want more kids? This is very tricky. I think the 2 of you need to pray together a lot and to trust God more. There might be circumstances, for example, if the spouse's health is really at risk, that getting pregnant for her is potentially life-threatening, you know. But then, even then, you can't contracept. You could use natural family planning, but then she might be nervous. Then what do you do? Blah, blah, blah. You must talk to your parish priest about these things. But no priest, no bishop can tell you, okay, it's okay to use contraception in those circumstances. In confession, we might say, we understand why you did that. But no priest or bishop can give you permission to sin, okay? And then the third question, is is a very long, complicated question. This is about Vicka and the baby Jesus. Okay, this Vicka is one of the visionaries here in Medjugorje. Now, I don't know if I should be answering this question. I said these are questions on the faith, on what we have to believe and what we have to do. So if I start answering Medjugorje questions, it might open the floodgates to all kinds of silly questions. But maybe this is important to you, so I will try to answer this one. The question is to do with an incident that happened a long time ago. I think it was 1985. Let me check my phone, because I wrote about this. See, this is what happens when you ask me questions like this. And I can't find the right section. Don't do this again. Okay, questions on the faith or morals. Okay, the incident happened on 14 January 1985. Okay, there was a man named Jean-Louis Martin, who was described by eyewitnesses as an opponent of the apparitions, spent 7 months in Medjugorje and many times saw strange phenomena, and he continues to search for a natural explanation for them. That's written by Mary Craig. Close to that time, she did this. And our Dennis Nolan from MaryTV said, "Here we have the epitome of the dogmatic skeptic who will not believe even the testimony of his senses if it contradicts his presuppositions." Okay, so what happened was, in those days, the apparitions were taking place in the small room on the right-hand side of the altar in the church, okay, 1985, 14 January. And Jean-Louis was present, and Witzka was the visionary nearest to him. She was on the leftmost side, and he was even more to the left, by the side, standing there with this female companion of his. And he, during the ecstasy, during the apparition, when Witzka is looking at Jesus and the other visionaries are there, he makes what he calls a karate gesture. He does that in front of Witzka's face, okay? Trying to startle her or something. I don't know why he calls it a karate gesture. What he makes is a Three Stooges gesture, okay? And really, I wish Witzka had gone like that and gone nyuk, 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 or something like that, but this is completely straight out of the Three Stooges. But Jean-Louis seems to be a clumsy man. And, you know, if you were to make this sort of gesture to anyone, there is a reflex where you would close your eyes and maybe even move your head back, but certainly flinch somewhat. And that, the flinch response comes from as soon as it enters your peripheral vision. So that's like more than around half a meter away or something. I can't remember the exact figures, but here, this is all caught on video. Witzka does not flinch or anything until the fingers are very close, and then she seems to move back and blink repeatedly. Okay? Not move back, her head tilts back and then comes back. So as a reflex, it's a very delayed reflex. Something odd is going on that she didn't respond sooner. And then also her head moving back. Now, there was another man, Professor Louis Bélanger, from at the University of Montreal in those days, also a Medjugorje skeptic, and he was on hand to record this all on his video. Now, Mary Craig, the journalist, the BBC journalist, she implies that Jean-Louis' fingers contacted Witzka's eyes. And the video appears to confirm this. Okay? The objection is basically this, you know, if you're really in ecstasy, why did her head move and why did she blink? They're saying that no response should have happened. But Mary Craig and Professor Dr. František Mraček from Prague, they both say that first of all, the eyelid response is too delayed to be a conscious reaction, and also from the head movement and looking at the video, Dr. Mraček believes that Jean-Louis actually poked her in the eye, one of his fingers at least. It was his index finger and middle finger jabbing, so the middle finger contacted this eye, the left eye, Witzka's left eye, in the sclera, which is very likely. I mean, the whole thing looks very clumsy, and I mean, how do you do that and pull back in time without poking someone in the eye? And Jean-Louis probably was nervous, I imagine, and he does a very clumsy move, and the VHS tape is 24 frames per second, Dr. Mraček explains, and you can see from the frames, there's the hand moving in and then moving out, but there's like a delay right at the end where something is missing. And there's no frame that records actual contact, but he says looking at what's going on, the trajectory and the withdrawal, that certainly he contacted Witzka's eyeball with one of his fingers. And so the head recoiling is because he pushed her, and then she blinks because she's been poked in the eye. Okay? So, first of all, the objection is, if you're in ecstasy, there should be no response whatsoever. Now, I've just answered that the whole thing is because he poked in the eye and he was clumsy, Jean-Louis Martin. But this idea that someone in ecstasy does not respond to anything at all, is that true? Because let's look at Fatima. On the 13th of July, Lucia's words to Our Lady were audible to those present and near enough to hear her. And Lucia then rose, pointed to the east, saying to the people, "Do you want to see Our Lady?" So Lucia is clearly still seeing Our Lady and talking to people. She's interacting, okay? And then there's the famous example of Bernadette where Jean, it's always a Jean, isn't it? It's a Jean-Baptiste Estrade witnesses this, that a candle slipped from Bernadette's hand and was underneath, her hand was over the flame and stayed there for quite a few moments and nothing happened. And then she, it happened a second time actually, witnessed by Dr. Duzou. And I think he puts the candle under her hand and nothing happens. And then after the apparition, when they do it again, Bernadette withdrew her hand and crying out, "I'm getting burned." Okay, so that is an example of someone in ecstasy, Bernadette, not responding, whereas we have Lucia able to interact with people outside and still seeing Our Lady. But we also have Bernadette doing the same thing, of seeing Our Lady and interacting with other people. And this is at the third apparition, 18th February 1858, where Madame Millet and her companion, Jeanne-Marie Millet, and her servant, I forget the servant's name, they both go, Antoinette, that's the servant's name. They both accompany Our Lady and give Bernadette, they accompany Bernadette and give Bernadette paper and an inkwell and a quill to write down the lady's name, to ask the lady to write down her name. So we have the description of what happened. So Bernadette says to the lady, "Would you be so kind as to write your name?" And Our Lady laughs, "It is not necessary." And then very seriously she says, "Would you be so gracious as to come here for a fortnight?" And Bernadette promises to come. And then Our Lady says, "I do not promise to make you happy in this world, but in the other." Now the companions can't hear all of this, and they become impatient. And Bernadette then makes a gesture for them to keep quiet or get out the way. What gesture? Something like that, I guess. So she's being pestered by them while she's in ecstasy. And then Madame Millet says, "Bernadette, ask her, just as I told you." And Bernadette says, very surprised, "But I did ask her very loudly." And her answer, Madame Millet, Bernadette says, "She began to laugh." And Millet says, "Did you say it properly?" Bernadette, "Yes." She didn't, and Millet again, "She didn't say anything to you?" Bernadette said, "She asked me to come for a fortnight." And then Millet then says, "Ask your lady if my presence offends her." And Antoinette, the servant, "Ask her if we can come closer now." And Bernadette asks Our Lady, and Our Lady then responds, "There's nothing to hold you back." So all of this is during an apparition. There's an interaction with Our Lady and with these two who have accompanied Bernadette. So who says that when you're in ecstasy you are completely oblivious to the outside world? It seems to vary. According to visionaries at Lourdes and Fatima, it varies. So there's a third part to all this, which is that Vitska then was dragged back at the insistence, I think, of Professor Bélanger, who was so scandalized at the eye-poking incident that she seemed to flinch and respond, that she was dragged back into the room and told, "Give an explanation." And so she was brought back by Fra Ivan Vego, one of the Franciscans here at the time. And she she is asked to explain herself, and it's clear that she doesn't understand what's going on or what had just happened, because listen, this is all very disjointed, but this is also on tape. And she says, once during the time of her biography, this is when Our Lady had been giving her life story to Witzka, when Our Lady was pointing and showed me the child Jesus in her arms. He was bent like this, When she held Jesus to herself, I thought he would fall out. But I didn't see anyone here during the apparition. I am then only by myself. She's saying that during the apparition, she's not aware of other people. But I am not at all aware of these others. But when she, Our Lady, showed me the little one, the child Jesus, I'm not at all aware of these others, but me, no. But me, I'm not at all aware of others, conscious of others. Only thing was, I was afraid the little one might fall. He was like this, she was holding him with a hand like this, and he was there as if I will have to catch him. So Witzka's very confused response is, she doesn't understand at all what they're talking about, that she flinched or she blinked. She's just, I think she's been told, you made a movement or something, and then she's trying to think of when she might have done that. And there was this, and she talks about another time, not even that day. She says that on this other occasion when Our Lady was giving her life story, I certainly thought the way the child Jesus was leaning forward, whether would I have to move forward and catch him or something like that. Okay, so she just talked, and really it's like a free flow of her conscious stream. And that then scandalized Professor Bélanger and others, like, the child Jesus falling, blah, blah, blah. So this is all clearly fake. But as you can see, first of all, Jean-Louis poked Witzka in the eye. And that's almost certainly what happened. But number two, someone in ecstasy, it doesn't mean that they're completely unaware of everything around them. They can react as visionaries like Saint Bernadette and Lucia have shown, and Lourdes and Fatima respectively. And then number three, Witzka's strange explanation. I think it's clear that she doesn't understand what she's being asked. She's been dragged back to the room after the apparition and said, explain yourself. And so she thinks about when this might have happened. She doesn't seem to realize it's that day, so she just talks about an incident in the past. Okay, so yes, this is really what Jean-Louis did, is an assault. I mean, these days, the police should have been involved. But I think in those days, the police were communist. So I think Jean-Louis, or no one would have wanted the police involved in those days. But it sounds really like he was very clumsy, poked her in the eye, and what you see is her neck movement and blinking, and this is like a natural response, like a reflex. But she remains in ecstasy. But even then, we should be open to the possibility that anyone who's receiving an apparition, even in ecstasy, could possibly interact with certain external stimuli. Okay.